Welcome, everyone. My name is Jack Ahern, and I work with the General Alumni Association. I just want to welcome you today to this career conversation on entrepreneurship. First, want to thank you all for your membership. Without paying members like you, this webinar would not be possible. We are recording this webinar. We'll send out a link once it is posted. So if you miss anything or need to leave partway through, don't worry. We'll be sending out the link at about 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks after the recording. Feel free to type questions into the chat. You can either send them to everyone or you can send them specifically to me, Jack Ahern, and I'll be looking at them as we go. But we'll have some time at the end to go over the questions with Ted. Very excited to announce Ted Zoller, 2010 PhD. Ted oversees the teaching and outreach programs of the Entrepreneurship Center at Keenan Flagler. His research focuses on role and structure of entrepreneurial networks and interrelationships with investor syndicates. He has posited a deal maker's algorithm to identify the most important actors in entrepreneurial ecosystems. I'm going to get that word. It's tough for me to say. He is an advisor to the Blackstone Charitable Foundation and works with them to scale the Blackstone Entrepreneurial Network and Entrepreneurship Networking project based on his research. He received his PhD from UNC, master's degree from University of Virginia in Syracuse, and a dual degree from the College of William and Mary. Without further ado, here's Ted.
Thanks so much. Jack, I'm excited to be with the alumni today. This is a passion that I've had in helping to understand what entrepreneurism can add in a person's life. It really opens up a set of opportunities if you approach your career as an entrepreneur. And I framed a conversation around your career as thinking through entrepreneurship. I have a methodology I call the 6 M's, and I wanted to walk through that methodology. But first, I thought we would kind of level set by looking at the nature of entrepreneurship. So I wanted to start with a simple question. You might have come into the webinar this morning thinking, I'm not an entrepreneur. I've heard a lot about it. I want to find out more about it, but that's not a term I'm going to use. And I've done this with students and practicing entrepreneurs all over the world. And there are several reasons why people say they're not an entrepreneur. The number one reason is they don't have an idea. And I think you'll find by the end of this that having an idea is just the table stakes. In fact, entrepreneurs usually appropriate their ideas. The second reason is they don't have resources. They don't have the money to make it happen, or the opportunity costs are too high. But you're going to find that entrepreneurs generally will operate with resources not under their control. Many people say I'm not an entrepreneur because I don't have a company. Well, I know several entrepreneurs who've had multiple companies in their life. So the times that they're in between companies, does that mean they're no longer entrepreneurs? So there's a lot of reasons why people say they're not entrepreneurs. And maybe, fundamentally, there are key reasons in your background that would suggest that entrepreneurism is not you. You might be the operator or the person behind the entrepreneur. You might be the individual who is really good at selling and marketing. But an entrepreneurial mindset is going to benefit everyone. And I thought maybe we'd start with that basic question. What is an entrepreneurial mindset? This is a definition from Merriam-Webster. This is the lexicon of the English language. And you see the etymology, it comes from the French language. One who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. My sense is that that's the most boring definition of entrepreneurship you could probably have. Someone who organizes and manages. But the most important element of that definition is assuming a risk. In order to be an entrepreneur, you have to take a risk. And many of you might be thinking to yourself, I'm very risk averse. This is not for me. But you're going to find that many entrepreneurs who are risk averse mitigate that risk. It's a way of actually de-risking the opportunity. So that's actually really helpful.
I'm going to pause you real quick. I think people are having trouble seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right, we're good to go.
I'm glad, Jack.
Actually, hold on. Still not.
No.
Let's see. Okay, I think we are good.
Okay. Can you see me?
Let's slow this down a little bit. There you
So I'm glad Jack's here. I'm not used to this technology here. So going back for a moment, we talk about this entrepreneurial mindset. And, I think that this will benefit anyone on this webinar because, people associate entrepreneurism with being involved with a startup. And entrepreneurism goes well beyond the startup process. Building a company is an inexorable part of entrepreneurship, but it doesn't have to be a brand new company. I know many people who've worked in larger organizations. So here's the definition I just mentioned: someone who manages and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. Assumption of risk being really important. But it comes from a French loanword from the 18th century. The two parts of the term entre, which is enter or between or among, and prendre, which is the verb to take or to capture. You don't see invention in that definition. You don't see someone who is in the lead and the pioneer. You see someone who's between and who captures, someone who works among other people to identify opportunity, bring those things together. So think about it almost like integration, or someone who actually assembles the opportunity and makes it possible. This is really fundamentally what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about leveraging outside resources and bringing those things together in a novel way to create value. So the first definition of entrepreneurship comes from Cantillon back in the 17th century, who wrote an essay to talk about the assumption of risk and someone who is willing to pay a certain price for a product and resell it at an uncertain price. He was the first one to actually talk about uncertainty. And entrepreneurism is clearly about being comfortable with uncertainty. That's your tool. How do you use uncertainty or risk as a way to build new resource and ultimately build great value? But I really favor Schumpeter's definition. Schumpeter was a neoclassic economist, and he talked about the entrepreneur who's willing to take a new idea and invention into a successful innovation and employ what he calls the gale of creative destruction to update, our understanding of how things work. So you can think of creative destruction as a function of taking old process or dysfunctional kind of things that unfold around us and actually making them better. I would submit to you that Jeff Bezos, he's been an entrepreneur for 20, 25 years. When he started the book business, everyone thought he would never go anywhere. And his innovation isn't all that tremendous. He innovated the way to actually be able to just click to efficiently buy and sell products. So he eliminated the search costs and the convenience problem in accessing third-party models. It's not a wildly disruptive concept. In fact, I met Clay Christensen a couple years ago. You might know Clay Christensen from the creative destruction idea, and obviously he took it from Schumpeter. But he was talking about disruption. And I said, he did more single-handedly to make entrepreneurship unattainable to everyone. Entrepreneurs created this country. If you look in any city that we live in or any community, you're going to find entrepreneurs at the core of what we did. So entrepreneurism is functionally about getting things done. It's not about being disruptive necessarily. But obviously, this function of creative destruction is an important part because you change the nature of the game, you change the rules. Entrepreneurs leverage a game-changing opportunity. For those of you who say, look, I'm not an entrepreneur because I'm happy in my job and I love my organization, I'm going to stay with it for the rest of my career. Well, Gifford Pinchot came to your assistance. He came up with this notion of entrepreneurship, someone who takes an idea and leverages it through assertive risk-taking within a larger organization. Think about what makes a great large organization effective or productive. It's usually about doing one thing very, very, very well, distributionally or marketing wise, or accessing a customer need or what have you. So there's parts of the company that's about operations and optimization and ultimately efficiency. But there's got to be a part of a corporation that's thinking about, what do we do next? What's the next product? What is the next business model? How do we respond to competitors who are going to come and try to take our market share? And that's the function of an entrepreneur within a large organization. They actually make that happen. Well, here's Harvard. I don't usually, celebrate Harvard very much, but this is Harvard's definition, and obviously it's very long. Uh, and I like it a lot because it's about someone who is not thinking about an idea at this point in time, but someone who's thinking about an addressable opportunity as the market changes. So think about the context changing, and that changing marketplace is what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur does not stand still. They do not play checkers. They play chess. They don't play chess on one level. They play chess on three levels. I'll explain that in a moment. But the notion of entrepreneurism is actually trying to anticipate where the puck is going to go, where the market's going to evolve. It's not about just trying to respond to incrementally what's happening today. But this is my favorite definition. It's short, it's clear, and it actually opens up a great set of opportunities. Howard Stevenson said, entrepreneurship is a pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. So for those of you who don't have any money or don't have any opportunity costs or you don't have any time, Howard Stevenson gave you the opportunity to kind of become an entrepreneur, because frankly, an entrepreneur appropriates most of the things they bring to the table. They appropriate ideas, they appropriate resources, and they appropriate ultimately the innovations that are used, and they come together with a novel package that creates value. Why I believe entrepreneurism is really a critical element of what we do here at UNC and throughout the world is that it's a vehicle whereby you can actually assimilate your values, your personal mission orientation, and your vision for the future, and put it together in a novel way to actually implement your dream. I know that sounds kind of hokey, but the truth of the matter is you can make your own job. You can build your own mission. You can implement your own set of values, and you can define your own vision using entrepreneurism. Entrepreneurism is the great opportunity opener. It gives you an opportunity to take your ideas to the next level. But this word, must excite you. That's why you get into it. The upside, the opportunity, the potential of a particular venture. You start that process, but entrepreneurism is not easy. This is not like a layup. This is a really difficult 3-point shot. And frankly, that's not even accurate. It's more like while you're in the key, trying to get to the basket when you're heavily defended, somewhat like how the Heels were feeling yesterday with Virginia. My sense is that the biggest part of entrepreneurism is the assumption of risk. What is that? It is really leaning into an uncertain market opportunity. There's so much that you don't know, and you try through experimentation to learn what the market is all about. There's no market research report that's going to tell you your way through the market. It's going to be a set of trial and error kind of events. This is also where you've got to get comfortable with. And many of you might say, I'm not an entrepreneur because I can't accept this word, failure. Failure is your tool. It's your opportunity to learn. And it's ultimately the vehicle you use to, find a better way through. So, as you're building out your market discovery, you're going to find you're putting up a proposition to the market that will lead maybe to adoption, but most likely will lead to, a lack of adoption or a failure. Well, based on that, you get feedback, you readjust, and then you build out something that works. Failure is your tool for learning. This is a word I want you to take out of your lexicon, luck. It's easy to say someone who has had a lot of opportunity in their life has been lucky. Luck is a capricious event. I make the distinction between luck and fortune. And I think in many cases, we've lost that distinction in the way we think about it today. Louis Pasteur said that chance favors prepared mind. This is, I think, truly a reflection of what entrepreneurism is about. Entrepreneurs prepare themselves to take the jump when the opportunity presents itself. So let me explain in greater detail. Sadly, these are the images that come up when we, Google the word fortune. And unfortunately, it's a game show, right? The Wheel of Fortune is now the dominant thing that shows up in the Google search engine. A lot of people think about Vegas, the black seven, the roulette wheel, what have you. Again, these are capricious types of luck. Harvard even has this cash profit and ROE wheel. It's the same kind of bull on three different dimensions. Um, the Wheel of Fortune was a concept that was in old Western philosophy, but is still captured by Eastern philosophy. The notion of fortune is something that actually turns as you move. You actually have to manage your path in fortune. And a fortunate person is someone who knows how to manage that path. So one of the best articulations was Niccolo Machiavelli, who wrote a really angry book when he was imprisoned by the Medici, called The Discourses. Many of you might have read The Prince, but read The Discourses. It's a much thicker and more angry book, but it talks about fortune and a person with fortune as a set of wheels, and the wheels are turning in different directions, and the wheels are turning at different velocities, and a fortunate person knows when to jump from wheel to wheel to wheel. How many of you are sitting on that wheel right now? The opportunity presents itself. You have not prepared yourself to jump, and that opportunity goes by the wayside. I bet you a good half of you have ideas that you came up with, didn't implement them. Now you see them out in the market and you said, that could have been me. Well, an entrepreneur captures the opportunity. They jump on that opportunity. They grab that brass ring, which is a takeoff. I don't know if anyone knows that term, where it comes from, but it comes from at the turn of the century, Ferris wheels. And they used to hang a brass ring, and people would hang off the end of the Ferris wheel, and they'd reach as high as they could to try to grab the brass ring. It was their opportunity to grab fortune, right? So it's built into our concept. My sense is that, when we look at who entrepreneurs are, these are people who capture opportunities. I find that entrepreneurs are usually out the door doing things while I'm still thinking about it. I guess I am a classic academic in some ways, but I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And, I might think too much. A great entrepreneur typically is already out there testing how to get something done. They're always in kinetic movement. And these are the faces that come up when I ask my students who the great entrepreneurs are. And there's something obviously wrong with this picture, because a lot of these folks were disruptive entrepreneurs. A lot of these folks leverage venture capital. Many of these folks obviously are innovative, but some of them were just great marketers that ended up building monopolies. Let me point out a couple. On the lower right-hand corner, you might not know those two gentlemen, but that's Hewlett and Packard in front of their garage. The garage is on the list of historic places. It's in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto. And that's where they started Hewlett Packard. It's amazing when you think about HP, it's all the innovations that came out of it. Now it's just an ordinary company. It does, printers and it's, I guess, being bought or buying Xerox. I think Xerox is buying them or trying to buy them as we speak. It's not a very highly innovative company like it was when the two entrepreneurs were running it. And they started in their skunk works right in their garage. The person on the lower left, you might not know him, but you can thank him for your smartphone. He's Andy Grove, the founder of Intel. He wrote some of the most angry blog posts at the end of his life. He passed away a couple years ago. And he said, Silicon Valley is not solving serious problems. They're solving search, they're solving e-commerce, and they're solving, relationships. I miniaturized the microchip. Come on, give me a break. They've got a point, but something's obviously wrong. One of the reasons I put all these pictures up is this is not the view of entrepreneurism that I share. One, they're all males. Number one, they're all white. There's no diversity in this. And frankly, you can be entrepreneurs in many different ways. And just to be provocative, just calling out the females. Meg Whitman is up on the upper left-hand corner. I'm hoping people remember Meg. Meg was the founder of eBay, of PayPal. She was the CEO of Hewlett Packard. So the types of entrepreneurism that led Hewlett Packard to get started followed on with Meg Whitman. And you probably recognize a heel on here. Down in the lower left is Sally Krawcheck. Sally was the CEO of Merrill Lynch, but she's doing some of her best work now after she retired from Merrill Lynch with Elevest and Elevate. an investment platform for women in entrepreneurism. And Elevate is a network of female business leaders and entrepreneurs. But these are people that are just as disruptive and just as impactful, but I don't celebrate them either. I think entrepreneurism is an everyday phenomenon. It's everywhere. There's this left brain and this right brain. The left brain is the science brain, the thinking brain, the philosophical brain. The right brain is the artistic brain, the one that's not, looking for definition and everything. They're not looking for an answer. They're looking to explore. They're looking to be creative. And an entrepreneur fuses those in a very unusual way. It's not uncommon for entrepreneurs to be somewhat what we call neurodiverse. Neurodiversity means that they think differently than other people. Can we learn how they think? I think so by observing them. But there probably is an innate part of growing up in that kind of culture. Neurodiversity is a key part, I think, of entrepreneurism. And I'll show you the people that I celebrate. And these were all students of mine here at Carolina who took a course that uses some of the material I'm showing today to build their companies. And each of them worked for people beforehand, and all of them have either had wild success as entrepreneurs or have exited their companies already. I'll celebrate Callie Broyle. Callie Broyle is a colleague of mine. She started an organization called A Ban Against Neglect to help children in Ghana. And you see what she's holding in her hands are a whole series of products. She went to Ghana and realized that there's so much poverty there. And she saw street kids who had no opportunity whatsoever. And the people in Ghana drank potable water out of little plastic bags. And she paid a penny or a nickel to every kid who would show up with plastic bags, and she'd gather them. And then she made a whole series of products that actually ended up being used to, she'd bring them back to Carolina, by the way, in a suitcase, sell them to her friends, and then send the money back to Ghana. Well, we met her during that period. We built a business model for a band. Now it's running a school in Ghana as a sustainable business. And Callie's on to her next venture. Irene's in the upper right-hand corner. Irene is a very famous designer. She's not actually very famous from what she's doing now. She was a textile designer, and she is a princess from Ethiopia, and she's bringing back native weddings. And what she's found, and this is what's exciting, is African Americans don't remember or don't know their lineage because of the concepts of slavery. She's using genetic science to allow the women to identify their origins and then linking them back to the tribal wear for their own weddings so that African American women can be married in their own garb. That's a disruptive entrepreneur. The fellow on the lower left, Ryan Stone. Ryan came to me with the worst business idea ever. It was to start an airline. And I said, well, forget it. It's a highly regulated industry. It's not one for a newbie. And he was a submarine commander at the time. Well, he's standing in front of a couple of the jets that were under his control, started a company called Da Vinci Jets. And he said, look, I've got a new business model. I want to provide aviation services to companies that need strategic aviation as a vehicle of competitiveness. He talked Nucor Steel, a steel company here in the U.S., based in North Carolina, to let him take over their jet fleet and gave them a safety guarantee, 100% guarantee on safety, and that they could fire him the next day. So no long-term contracts. They went for it. By the end, he built out an incredible jet fleet serving the needs of high-growth companies and ended up selling the company and now is serving the same market, building 5G mobile telephony in the air. So you'll be able to have your private jet and high-speed internet, thanks to Ryan Stone, who actually was a submarine commander, a naval physicist. He did nuclear power. So I could go on and on. The in the middle bottom, for instance, are two Martin Knowles and Ben Wood. Martin and Ben started their company OpFlow last year in my class, and they're two doctors. And they said it's kind of crazy when we do a surgery that they put all these instruments out and desterilize them all. When I end up using two or three, And by the way, when you're in surgery, you're charged for every one of those instruments. So they came up with a model, piece of software, and a sterilization mechanism so that you could have a preference card that the surgeon can say, these are the instruments I want primarily. Then I want to have the rest in reserve, still in sterile condition, should I need them. So they're reducing the cost of surgery by about 25%. And they're doctors here in North Carolina. And Martin is actually on the staff at UNC. Ben is quitting being a doctor to run the company, and they just recently got a strategic investment from Steris Corporation. So these are game changers. These are the people I celebrate. There's nothing really disruptive about them. They've all taken it upon themselves to solve a problem and to get out there and offer something of great value. These are the people I'd celebrate. And I kind of think about y'all, I think of you like this, I celebrate you, try to explore what it is about yourself that could actually allow you to actually take your own future into your own hands. So let's open it up to just a conversation right now, whether or not, based on all the material I've sent so far, presented so far, could you get comfortable with calling yourselves an entrepreneur? And if not, could you share, some of your reservations?
Feel free, everyone, to write it into the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and answer Ted's question here.
It's very hypothetical, I realize. Many of you might already be entrepreneurs, and I wish there was a way we could vote. I wonder how many entrepreneurs are on the call. I bet you would agree with most that I've said. It's a very everyday kind of thing, but I'm sure there are people that said, I tuned in because I want to find out why I'm not an entrepreneur. And I think everyone has a potential. I honestly think entrepreneurs are made, not born. But you have to dare yourself to do it. Any questions?
Yeah, here we got one. Amy says, absolutely, but it's the art of selling myself as much. That's the trouble.
Yeah, no, that's really hard, Amy. That's really hard. I've run into so many brilliant entrepreneurs that just can't communicate, that just can't sell themselves. And you recognize that there's a difference between being a solopreneur, someone who is an entrepreneur by themselves, and what I believe is an entrepreneur operates in teams. If you can't sell yourself, go find a co-founder or find someone on your C team who can sell and inspire confidence. What is, we talk about superpowers. My superpower over the weekend was clearing up leaves, I guess. It's the fall, just kind of making fun. But think about it. What is your superpower? What is it that you bring to the table? If you can't sell yourself, are you someone who's really good at delivery? Are really good at execution? You're really good at getting things done? Are you a good problem solver? Find out who you are as an entrepreneur, brand yourself in that way, and don't worry about selling yourself to others. Try to bring other people onto your team who can help sell your vision for what would be done. Believe it or not, it's really amazing to start a company. You can just ask people who have a common passion and vision for what's being done and bring them into your thinking and into your vision.
Any other questions? And we'll pause again later for other questions or comments on whether or not you think you're an entrepreneur. We have London here who says, for me, I am very fulfilled by my day job. I have ideas and energy around them, but it's challenging to carve time to invest in driving them forward.
Yeah, that's a hard one too, London. I'm so happy that you found a fit between who you are and the organization you work for. And I celebrate people who work in large organizations who make things happen. But you have ideas that you can use to support your organization, support your company. It's important that you make sure to reveal those ideas to others, socialize them openly with your coworkers, with your bosses, maybe even the senior leadership at your organization, and engage in the conversation as to how they might make this happen to build out a real concept of how you can add value. You'll find that that feedback will lead to something else. The idea you have might permutate into 3 or 4 different versions, maybe even 100 different versions of your principle, a concept, before it's actually adopted by the company. But your company needs your idea. And if you are quiet and compliant and silent, they'll never receive that benefit. So expose your ideas to your coworkers, managers, and senior leadership.
And we have one more here from Natalie who says she would like to start a business when she retires.
Oh, that's we call, believe it or not, there's a whole program, and you're going to probably laugh because I just recently received my AARP card. They have an entire program called Boomerang Entrepreneurs, and these are people who are second career entrepreneurs. Most of us are really dead bored playing golf. There's only so much home decoration you can do. There's so much cleaning up you can do, so much traveling you can do before you just need to find your second purpose. I really celebrate you looking into the possibility. And the good news is, over the course of your life, you probably have, some money set aside that, your retirement's covered. Don't bet the farm on your new idea. Just bet what you can afford to lose. Have a little fun with your concept. I just saw today that there's a microfinance fund that was done by Jack Ma in China, and it's oversubscribed. And most of the people that are subscribing to the microfinance loan program are second career entrepreneurs or post-professional entrepreneurs, or as AARP calls them, boomerang entrepreneurs. So get out there and get something done. And by the way, for those of you who are called to service, you can build an entrepreneurial framework for service, so you can do service at a high impact. All right. Should I go forward?
Yeah, again, people can submit thoughts or questions in the chat, and I'm compiling them. But we'll let Ted keep going here.
Well, I wanted to unpack the idea of how you build an entrepreneurial career. And there are building blocks. And I talk about it as the 6M model. Maybe I'm fond of alliteration, but it's an easy way to break down entrepreneurship, which is a really complex concept, into things that are really tangible, really easy. And I find this model a lot easier than, there's other methodologies like the lean methodology or disciplined entrepreneurship that have been articulated in the past. And they're all kind of cookbook-like. And what's nice about this methodology is it allows you to start unpacking the problem. And it looks like you can see in the diagram a spider web. You're actually starting out in the farthest extent of that process, and then you work toward focus over time. So you're experimenting in all those areas until you know what you are at the middle. And I'll explain it in a moment. So I hope I've proven that for those of you who came into this course with no ideas, that you can be an entrepreneur. But I find from the history that several of you have at least one idea. By the way, Caroline is here to help if you have an idea. We have a wonderful accelerator called Launch Chapel Hill. We're going to be opening an alumni offering in our entrepreneurship program. I run the Entrepreneurship Center at Keenan Flagler. It's a great opportunity to engage. Several of you might be coming in with 3 ideas. I know a good subset of you might have more than 5 ideas, and there's always one of you out there that has 10 or more ideas. But ideas are a dime a dozen. People come up with ideas are extraordinarily valuable because they'll actually build out different variations of the theme. For instance, that light bulb, when Edison came up with the idea of the light bulb, the latest version of the light bulb was invented about 30 miles from here at Cree, a diotic light solution. And Cree is now one of the highest growth companies in the country. But it started with one individual who said, why do we burn a filament in a airtight chamber made out of glass? That seems really weird. And you can't tune it so that the characteristics of light, we're in a fluorescent light, you can tell fluorescent light area, this light is terrible. The natural light's right here at the window. With the Cree diotic light, you can now get it to have the same characteristics of the outside. So what I'm trying to say is an idea person can come up with the modifications to turn what would otherwise be kind of a B-level idea and turn it into an A-level idea. So it starts with kind of a function. Some of you are driven by the innovation or the solution. That's what I call the meaning of the business. And on top of the meaning, You have your motivation. Why do people have interest in it? I'm interested in a better light because I want to have, light conditions that are like the outside during the nighttime. I want to be able to see things better than what you might have with an incandescent or fluorescent light. Well, those of you who think this way are what I would argue are the innovation entrepreneur. And what I find is most people approach entrepreneurism from innovation, from the starting point of entrepreneurs, from the starting point of innovation. But you might be surprised that not all entrepreneurs have ideas. In fact, the idea is not the business. Ideas are inherently valuable, but ideas that are applied and used are invaluable. There's so many ideas that are written down somewhere that have never been acted on. Release those ideas to the market. Recognize that if you have intellectual property, be careful about securing that intellectual property before you release those ideas. But for those of you who typically just have an improvement, you may not have any intellectual property at all. I will bet on someone who's first to execute over first to invent any day. If you start making that idea available to the market's going to tell you what it wants. Here's a chart that shows all the various things in the, this concept of social media, and so many companies have been built. We've right here, several unicorn companies and then companies that were wiped out within the first 6 months of their existence. And it's amazing. They've segmented in all these various ways. This is just a way to illustrate that we as a society can think of lots of different applications of a specific, and this is just people communicating with one another. It's fundamentally driven by human need. And I would submit to you that the best type of entrepreneurs will actually look in great depth at the nature of need and actually put that need into context, understand it in a very inexorable way. So you start with, in this case, the entrepreneur who starts with the problem, and I would argue that's the market. And on top of the problem, you build a beachhead or the customer that is looking to acquire that solution. So the problem is defined by the market, and the customer is that beachhead who is looking to acquire that. That's the marketplace entrepreneur. This is the person who doesn't start with the idea, they start with the problem. When they're reading the paper in the morning, they're looking at lots of different problems that are being faced by society. They're thinking, well, if it's not me, then who? I'll go fix that. And they dare themselves to go make it happen. That's the marketplace entrepreneur. And you'll find that the market is your wisest teacher. The market's going to teach you what your idea is and what value it produces. And launch and learn works much better than learn and launch. You can study something to ad infinitum until it becomes irrelevant. So I want to balance those two concepts, the market and the problem, and your innovation and solution. And on top of the problem, I want to understand the customer that wants it, the beachhead, and then what motivates them to buy it, meaning. And at that intersection is the value proposition. We talk about the value proposition as a function of defining end value to the customer. And there, at that union or intersection, is the expert entrepreneur. The expert entrepreneur is a person who balances the innovation with the market problem and finds what motivates that customer to buy. So if you're all innovation, start thinking about the problem. If you're all problem oriented, start to leverage innovation as a tool to help to unpack that problem. That's a function of expert entrepreneurism. Well, guess what? Almost all that's being done now in entrepreneurism deals with this axis, and I call that the horizontal axis. It's about just understanding the basic definition of the issue. Well, you might be surprised that there's another dimension, and I call it the vertical axis, and that's the business model itself. How do you actually address a business opportunity from the nature of the logic of the business, the strategy of the business, the distribution channels, the definition of the customer, all the things that go into defining a business model. And then the financial model, the economics of the business. How do you make money? What kind of margins can you expect? What kind of costs are associated with it? What type of pricing strategy would you use to actually make this happen? How big is the market? These are the basic economics of the unit economics. On top of the business model, I want to build a team. So I need management. That's the next M. Well, in order to build a business model, you need to think about what talent you need to execute on the business model. That business model is going to be like a design, and think about the people that are associated that would be needed to implement it. On top of money, I want to understand the milestones. So, what are the key goals you're going to actually build out to make this venture more realistic? And at that union, believe it or not, is the value proposition. The value proposition is your North Star when you're running a company. So this is the vertical axis that's so critical, and that's a function of execution. Now, what's ironic, most entrepreneurs I know are not strategic at all. They start with basically making soup. They start with what motivates them. They start with a customer need. They start with a few people they can bring together to make things happen. They usually can marshal a team, and they understand what are the building blocks. They know where to start and keep things going. These are not strategic in any ways. In fact, most of you could probably look at any problem and start attacking it using these four tools, but they are focused on building value, that value proposition. That's key. That is ultimately what they're looking to build. But let's bring it all together. So remember the market and the meaning. That's that dyad. On top of the market, I have the customer or the beachhead. On top of the meaning, their motivation. Now the business model. On top of the business, then you have the financial model. On top of the business model management, top of the financial model milestones, and the value proposition. That is the entire function of entrepreneurship. And I'm going to find that discovery is a function of this vertical axis of market and meaning reaching its intersection at value proposition, and execution on the horizontal axis, actually bringing the business model and the financial model in synchronization. So I know what kind of business model is going to scale well and which are the ones that are going to make the most money. So these are the pieces that we need to unpack. And what we've done at Carolina is built out a framework. I've built a methodology that I call the 6Ms that actually break down these elements into basic modules. So it starts with what drives you, meaning. What is your meaning in the business, in the market? Are you looking to solve a problem? Are you trying to build a great innovation? Are you trying to create new value? That's what drives you. At the core of meaning is your value proposition. And we add on top of that an understanding of the market, and then your market attack and market. Number three, your business model. What is the right model to use? Because many entrepreneurs make the mistake of having a great innovation and a pretty good idea of the market, but defining the worst business model. In fact, the business model is what takes them down if they're unsuccessful. Then understanding management, not just your own C-level co-founders, but also your headcount, your advisors, your board, your specialists and attorneys, consultants, accountants, all the people that play a role in building your company. Then milestones, how are you going to build out the key elements of the venture through time? And then money, the capital structure. So, when we think about these 6Ms, it's critical that you start to unpack their meaning. So when we look at meaning, it's really fundamentally defining the value proposition. Does it solve a big need, a pressing need, or a frustration? What's the pain? What is that addressable need? How big is the market? And then whether or not I can actually build a pricing strategy. On the model, I want to be able to identify a way I can reach an end customer. What's my customer interface? And then how will I build the operational side of the business to be efficient and to build out a high throughput kind of company, not a one-trick pony? In market, I want to see structural profitability. I want to see a big market with customers that'll pay. I want to, in the case of venture capitalists, they're looking for, high multiple businesses. But, what we're looking for is a sizable market opportunity, and then being able to understand how we might capitalize that opportunity. And we're always looking at the trends, the waves, and riding those waves. Also, we need to be looking in market at competition. I say ignore the competition while you're building, but then study the competition when you're marketing, because it's a really critical, how to differentiate and be different in the market. You have to build out that proof of concept, that minimum viable product, and then a channel strategy that ultimately can allow you to engage those customers. On the management side, building out my team, it's not just you alone, but the people that are in your tribe, the people that are hopefully endowed with the experiences that are going to allow your company to be successful, the characteristics, building a culture of a company, and then adding to the social capital of your venture by bringing on advisors who've done it and have been there. On the money side, understanding how the basic unit economics of the business operate. What type of cash flow will you require? What type of investment period is there? What type of growth can you expect? And what kind of margins can you expect? And then on the funding side, how you can build a financial model that will make sense to investors if you're going to raise money, or be able to bootstrap to a revenue event in the future, and that the deal structure is somewhat clear to everyone. So those are the 6 M's: meaning, market, model, management, milestones, and money. And what we find is this: the entrepreneurs that follow this process don't think about it linearly. They're going around that circle multiple times and making it happen. But these are the simple elements of building a business. And frankly, these are the tools that you could use in any organization as an entrepreneur to think about a new idea. So I'm going to just stop here for a moment. A lot of content. How would you use the 6 M's to advance your ideas or solve a problem? Does this make sense to you? And what are the things that you still question? Stump the professor, I guess. This is what the fundamental is. I know I'm moving very quick.
I guess we'll give people a second to write some questions, but I'm curious as how you came up with the 6 M's.
I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and what I wanted was a simple way to describe a business in a way that anyone could take it up. And I started thinking through, well, what are the building blocks of it? And then I started thinking through the process. And I find that an entrepreneur doesn't use a linear process. They're not linear in any way. They actually are iterating. They're always moving in a cycle. And the faster you can iterate, the more efficient you are. The truth of the matter is, I think entrepreneurs typically are trying to capture information as they go. They're building an understanding of the market by testing it against the market. So I wanted just a simple way to explain it all.
Nice. We got a question here from Donna. She asks, how do you choose the people to help you start out and be successful? So how do you choose your management?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. That's one of the hardest questions. I think it's the number one factor of venture success is the quality of your team. And I've been studying entrepreneurial leadership, as a matter of fact. And a company of all entrepreneurs is not a successful company, by the way. You need a whole different range of skills. You need operators, you need marketing people, you need people that can do fulfillment, the back office, things of that nature. But first off, you have to have alignment. It's really critical that when you meet up with a person who might be a co-founder or someone you'd bring onto your team, that there's a common vision of what you want, and that you're aligned in terms of what your view of the company is and where it's going to go. You have to spend time on that, because if you're not aligned, you're going to find the equivalent of a divorce. It's ugly. When a company is misaligned, you're going to find the potential of it being very caustic. It could be very toxic. And you can't have those mistakes as an early stage company, because that'll take you down. It's probably the number one reason why a company fails. It has nothing to do with money. It has something to do with everything to do with the team. This other piece is try to find what you're good at and then fill out the team with people that are going to complement you. Then build out advisors. I would argue that's a mirror to your team. So every one of your team members have an advisor who is experienced that they could call on individually, and then operate as an advisory group to support the entire venture and you as the entrepreneur. So, build out a team very systematically. First, alignment, and then secondly, a skill set mix that's going to be needed to execute your business.
We had one question that was submitted ahead of time, and they were just wondering, what are some good resources for the legal issues involved in starting a company? And how can I choose good support people like an attorney?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do not submit to the idea that, when you have a patentable invention, just pull off, something from the web or go to LegalZoom or what have you. I think a qualified new venture attorney is really critical, and they will navigate for you. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but I'm paying hourly. Well, yeah, it's part of the process. But many of the attorneys that work with early stage companies have programs that they work with entrepreneurs to defer fees or take partial fee in equity after the first financing or things of that nature. I think the most important thing to look for in an attorney is track record. What have they done in the past? Have they built businesses or helped entrepreneurs who have built businesses like your business? And do they have a corporate law background? In other words, are they do they know how to build out the documents that are needed to paper an investment? Do they know how to cover your legal liability and build out contracts? Do they know how to do the company formation in a way that will cover your needs over the long term? So, there are companies that are starting out as investable opportunities, build to sell, and companies that are build to last and more, I want to keep the company going. In the former, you might want to bring on investors. So you might start as an LLC and then convert to a C Corp. Whereas in the latter, the build to last, you might be an LLC or a corporation for a long period of time. Find the attorney that's qualified. Don't pick Uncle Joe because they know how to do probate law. Chances are there are only 4 or 5 in your given region that are qualified to do the work that you're looking to do. Should I move on?
Yeah.
I've got one last thing I wanted to share with you, and it's going to be quick. I want to encourage you all to think about, for those of you who came into this thinking, I don't know what this career seminar is about. It's almost like the reverse career seminar. In fact, sometimes I turn away people from the career services operation because where do you go to career services? You go there to get a job, right? It's a listed group of jobs. Well, I'm actually saying let's create your own job. And I particularly appreciate the boomerang entrepreneur out there. What are the problems we're solving? Let's look at those problems specifically. I'm going to use the 6 M's as part of that, and it's part of the process of meaning. And I look at the idea as not the company. The idea is just the starting point. That's the table stakes. The pain is ultimately where you need to live. So you are building a novel solution against a market pain. And your first challenge is defining the problem you're looking to solve. And I find entrepreneurs come up with really lame ideas and can't explain the problem they're solving. And they don't really understand what the fundamental pain is. Why is Amazon so successful? The pain is having to go to a big box store and find something at a Walmart. Well, I can just click a button now. That pain is now resolved. I don't know if that's going to be a lasting value proposition, but I'm sure Amazon is trying lots of different things, as you can tell. I look at that process of trying different things as a Rubik's Cube. You keep on going in this direction, it might work, this direction, it might work. You're always taking an idea and moving it around and trying to understand what is the right alignment so you can get to something that's going to work. And you're going to find when you start a problem, it looks like this. Highly complicated, complex environment. It seems disordered. It doesn't seem to have any real pattern. But entrepreneurs are fundamentally pattern recognizing people. They're looking for data that they start to observe as a pattern, and then they see the pattern, they define the pattern, then they rinse and repeat and build a company around that pattern. And it starts to look like this, or maybe even over time, it might even look like this. Entrepreneurs are talking about this concept called flow. When they start seeing the problem as a system, and that system unfolds, and they start to see almost an organic quality to the flow. Things happen in a certain way, and a company that just scales quickly is engaged in a problem where they've defined a solution that produces flow. That's the idea. Peter Diamandis, who started Singularity University and is one of the Facebook founders, I'm not Facebook, PayPal founders. He has this idea of exponential innovation, and he uses this term flow. But honestly, I look at it as the intersection of an entrepreneur's engagement with the problem, understanding the patterns that are underlying that problem, then building a solution where they're flowing with the problem and coming up with a real novel solution. IDEO, very famous design thinking organization in California, talks about the 4 fears. And these are the fears you have to kind of work against. The fear of the messy unknown. They use the term messy. The fear of being judged. Your idea is not good enough. Get over it. Someone's got to say it, and just start. The fear of, and by the way, Nike is the best tagline, the best USP I've ever heard. Just do it. I think that's entrepreneurism. Just do it. I think it has more to do with action than innovation, frankly. The fear of the first step. You got to begin that milestone, and then the fear of losing control. At some point you have to let go, and the idea becomes its own thing. It's not you, it's your idea, your company. It's not you, it's your company. You have every choice. You can quit the next day if you want. But if you're committed to the idea, you're going to stick with it. Then Herbert Simon talks about kind of this process of taking data collection to the next level, getting to real intelligence, from that, defining design, and then making important business model selection choices. So intelligence, design, and choice. Honestly, I believe Herbert Simon has it right. So many entrepreneurs use this, and this is an entrepreneur who's not studied the problem well. They just go around the problem and come up with a good one-trick pony solution. But a novel entrepreneur, a person who's rigorous, does this kind of thing, where they're actually understanding the problem and coming up with a true solution to the problem. And those are the ones that last. I do think that you can. There are many of you who are visionary, who can look up in the sky and dream of things. And I think that's an important. It's kind of part of playing. Remember when you were a kid and you played imaginary things, just allowing you to be you're just a kid again. That's a really nice thing. Be able to look out in the sky. But I look at it more like this. It's like the great unknown. Um, you know, Entrepreneurism is looking into space, and I've always been blown away by space. And I guess I was affected by 1970s style television, and we had on television this TV show Star Trek. Probably a lot of Trekkies out there. And what I loved about Star Trek is it kind of envisioned what could be. In fact, many of the things that were on Star Trek are actually existing today because people wanted that thing to happen. They were the entrepreneurs that did it. And I remember when the new version of Star Trek came out, that's the picture on the bottom. It was using the same concept as the original series. I'm such a Star Trek geek that I started to cry when that movie came out. It's ridiculous. But I remember back then, the notion of the Enterprise was so foreign because we were, dealing with Sputnik or the first Apollo missions or the space shuttle. Think about how we've evolved now, sending probes to Mars. We're going out to the outer edges of the galaxy. Think about what is possible, that pioneering spirit. What can you do? And, my sense is you have to think about building a better venture. And there's nothing behind this, but thinking through the full complexity of the problem, then engaging a simple solution that truly meets the needs of the people facing the problem. So building that better venture is about studying the problem well and leveraging that well. Many of you are in different parts of the world, and you're going to recognize that the world is a function of understanding how different societies have engaged the problem in different ways. And you're going to find that people in the East, for instance, may have a solution to a problem we have in the West, and the people in the West haven't figured it out. Or it could be you discover something in Africa that's really novel. I had an entrepreneur who experienced the neem tree, which is a tree that's grown in Africa, and it has these amazing characteristics that they embedded in creams and soaps and actually heals the skin. And now Just Neem is a Carolina-based company based on an African tree. Who would ever think? So unpack those 6 M's, realize that there's a way to go about doing it. Study and map the problem, engage your customers around the problem, study, define, and deliver on that need, and then iterate a complete solution. No solution, your magnum opus, your best idea isn't beginning to solve the problem. Start to engage the problem and you'll come up with a better idea. And I guarantee you'll come up with a better business model. What you're looking for is what people find of greatest value, discovering that compelling value proposition, and then defining it as a universal selling proposition, being able to sell, and then always pitch it. So you can see on the lower axis, specify the problem, map the problem's semantics, engage the target customers, clarify the need, iterate a complete solution, define the value proposition, test that value proposition, and then build the USP. Then you have an idea or a problem worth solving. So there you go. I would invite you all to leverage this framework as a framework to engage your work as entrepreneurs. And I hope you'll come back to Carolina to work with us. We're building an alumni offering with the GAA for entrepreneurs, and we're really excited about some of the resources we're going to make available to entrepreneurs. We have a number of resources available now. We have an accelerator program called Launch Chapel Hill, but you can find out about our ecosystem at eship.unc.edu. And I'm going to ask Jack to type that into the chat. eship.unc.edu. Sign up for our newsletter. I also have a podcast called On the Heels of Innovation. On the Heels of Innovation. It's a takeoff on us as a heels. And it's interviews with a number of entrepreneurs who are UNC graduates who have built out their companies. And we try to understand the key drivers of successful entrepreneurism. So think about entrepreneurship as a leadership function. So eship.unc.edu and the podcast, which can be found on any of the Play stores, on the Heels of Innovation. And look forward to engaging you. So I'm going to end by saying, make sure to go capture that opportunity, get off that wheel, go solve a problem. You know they're out there. We have more problems now than ever, and build a new concept, always adding value. I hope this was a useful way to spend some time, and I hope I've inspired you to act on your ideas and make them reality. We talk about them rendering visible. Make your ideas visible. It was a real honor to be here, Jack, and thanks for letting me be part of the GAA community.
Of course, you got a few more minutes?
Of course.
Some other questions?
Of course.
Great. We have Amy here is asking, would you mind touching a little bit more on Launch Chapel Hill and the process?
Yeah. So Launch Chapel Hill is an accelerator program. It's the most successful town gown accelerator. What I mean by that is it's run by the university, by the Entrepreneurship Center, but we bring in street entrepreneurs. We do an admission for Launch Chapel Hill every semester. So we have one in the summer for a 6-month sprint. We have one in the fall. It starts in January for another 6 months. Then we do an overlapping summer accelerator for students. So the fall and the spring are available to alumni. You can go to launchchapelhill.com and apply. It does involve being physically here. We don't have a virtual accelerator yet, but we're moving in that direction. So stay tuned on what we're going to be building out for people not in the Chapel Hill area. But I will submit to you that no matter where you are, you could use a 6M methodology, for instance, with an accelerator in your area. Say you're in Atlanta, you might want to go to Techstars. If you're in Dallas, you might want to go to Tech Wildcatters. Just Google for accelerators in your home region, or startup ecosystem or entrepreneurial ecosystem in your home region, and you'll find the resources that are there. It's now a nationwide and global phenomena.
Great. This was one of my favorite questions, and I think they're just trying to get a good idea out of you. They say, what do you see as the most promising emerging areas for entrepreneurship over the next 5 years?
You know, it's funny. I think we've gotten away from value creation, and I'm in love with craft and art. And right now, I would submit to you that Etsy is one of the biggest marketplaces on the web, largely because people want to be closer to value production. And due to outsourcing, I think we've ended up shipping a lot of our manufacturing overseas, and that's the most efficient business model, but it's not necessarily the most value-added function. People want to be closer to things they make. So I'm seeing a lot of food entrepreneurism, a lot of work in home goods, crafts. I'm seeing people getting into agriculture in a huge way. So I'm seeing a renaissance in putting your hands back in and building things. Then I would be foolish if I weren't to say I'm just as excited about some of the new technologies coming on board. So when you think about Condrivian waves, artificial intelligence, virtual and artificial reality, what we're doing in machine learning is exciting. What we're doing in the areas of artificial intelligence is super exciting. I'm seeing surges in robotics and automation, and obviously, all sorts of media. So these are the big growth markets in the future, and I'm chagrined to forget to include healthcare. That's the other big area. And what we have is an aging population. And for those of you interested in this, this is a huge market opportunity because people want to age in place. They're going to live longer. Genetically, we're doing better, but our longevity is getting greater. Our therapies are better. So many of us on this phone will live into their deep 80s, 90s, maybe even break 100 or more. And most people don't want to be in an institutional setting. They would rather age in place at home. So there's a lot of business opportunities just in serving the needs of post-professional retirees. Long answer to a story, but that's the bubble of the that I see out there now.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave it open, just the chat open, if anyone wants to submit a last minute question, but wanted to again say thank you to Ted for being here.
Well, thank you, Jack. This is a real pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining in on the call. We're going to send out this recording as well as some of the resources that Ted mentioned on the call. And yeah, again, thank you so much.
And come back to Carolina and start your company. You know, I got to tell you, UNC is one of the most entrepreneurial universities in the world. We have a campus-wide ecosystem now with an entrepreneurship minor, a cross-campus program, the business schools program, a makers facility. You'd be very proud to see Carolina is solving problems every day. I think the value of your degree is going to continue to go up because we're going to be creating that value.
Doesn't look like we have any more, but
all right, we'll sign off then.
Yeah.
Have a nice holiday and go Heels. That was what you needed.